December 7, 2022 by Nasli Petuvi.
Quiet, please, quiet. Engineer, we're ready to go. We're good? We have to wait? Okay.
Ricky, if you could start the webinar for Zoom, please. Ricky, if you could please start the webinar. Once again, Ricky, if you could please start the webinar on Zoom.
We're good? Okay. Good morning. I am Jim Gennaro, Chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection, and today we'll be holding a vote on two important resolutions that can help lead us forward on the road to a sustainable future. Resolution 258B, authored by me, speaks to the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Bond Act, which was passed as a statewide ballot initiative on Election Day. The Bond Act received overwhelming support from the voters in New York City. New York City's geographic location makes it particularly vulnerable to the threat of rising sea levels, as well as the increased frequency of hurricanes and tropical storms. The Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Bond Act enables the issuance of $4.2 billion in bonds to finance critical environmental restoration and resiliency projects across the state of New York, allocating $1.2 billion towards reducing flood risk in vulnerable areas, $1.5 billion towards climate change mitigation efforts, $650 million toward water quality improvement and resilient infrastructure, and $650 million towards the preservation and enhancement of open space and recreational amenities. We need these resources to build a sustainable future. That's the good news. Unfortunately, when it comes to the equitable allocation of funds for New York City's environment and environmental justice communities, the state has been far less than fair to New York City in the past, from the 1996 Environmental Bond Act to the present. That goes for state funding and federal funding that the state, through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC, is authorized to allocate to cities and counties throughout the state. As a former DEC Deputy Commissioner for New York City Sustainability and Resiliency from 2014 to 2020, I saw firsthand how New York City got shortchanged with regard to critical environmental funding. That's why I resigned that job to run for council again. Well, I'm back, and I intend to advocate for fair share for environmental funding for the city, hence this resolution on the Bond Act. Here's a recent example of how the city gets less in environmental funding than it should. This year, New York City DEP received just over 2% of the funds distributed through the New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Act. 2% of the funds for an agency, DEP, that serves more than 50% of the state's population. People may not know that DEP has 1 million customers outside of New York City in the 4 counties north of New York City. This is a grave injustice and cannot be allowed to stand. This resolution calls on Governor Hochul to ensure that our city is able to access funds from the Clean Water, from the Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Bond Act in a way that is reflective of of the state's population and our dire need as an island city vulnerable to storm surge, with underserved communities crying out for climate justice. I am most grateful to all the co-sponsors of this resolution. Resolution 169, authored by Councilmember Lincoln Ressler, a member of this committee, calls for the Climate Action Council to draft and the governor to implement a final climate action scoping plan that commits meeting CLCPA targets and a bold climate and environmental justice action in New York. I have much more in my statement on Reso 169 and how important it is, but I think it's best to hear about this resolution from its author. It is a privilege to me in a moment to recognize Councilmember Ressler for a statement on his resolution, which I am proud to co-sponsor with many other council members. Before I recognize Lincoln, just want to recognize that we're joined by Councilmember Holland, who is remote, Councilmember Moya, who is remote with us, Councilmember Gutierrez, Councilmember Hanks, Councilmember Menon, Councilmember Nurse, Councilmember Ressler, and Councilmember Kagan. And with that, it is my privilege to recognize Councilmember Ressler for his statement.
Thank you so much, Chair Gennaro and colleagues. I want to thank you for your support of Reso 169. I just think it's important to note, a few years ago, the state legislature passed landmark legislation, the CLCPA, which is the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, that set incredibly bold and ambitious benchmarks for us to achieve as a state to achieve a a carbon neutral future. And I'm really excited for us to achieve those ambitious goals, but we're waiting for the specifics. And that's what the Climate Action Council has to accomplish with the policies that they release as soon as later this month. And our resolution provides some very clear direction for what our expectations are of the Climate Action Council for how we can boldly reduce our carbon emissions. We are leading in this council with Local Law 97. Hopefully we will accomplish curbside mandatory composting and so many other ambitious and innovative solutions to address the climate crisis that we are facing. And I think it's really important that as the largest municipality in the state, we speak with one voice, as nearly a majority of New Yorkers, to demand that the Climate Action Council achieve sensible, ambitious policies that will reduce our carbon emissions. And that's what our resolution lays out. And I'm excited that we'll speak in one voice as a city of New York to direct Governor Hochul and the CAC to do just that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Ressler. I wish to be associated with Councilman Ressler's remarks. And before we call for a vote, I'd like to thank the terrific committee staff who have done such great work over the years. Our counsel, Samara Swanson, to my right, policy analyst Ricky Chawla, financial analyst Andrew Lane Lawless, and Brad Reed, who was with us today from the Infrastructure Division, and finally, last but not least, my legislative director, Nabi Kaur, for all their hard work. And with that said, Billy, is anyone here wishing to be heard about anything? No? Okay. Seeing none, I would ask Billy to set us up and call the roll. I urge a yes vote on both items, which I presume will be coupled.
Good morning. By 3 minutes. William Martin, Committee Clerk. Roll call vote. Committee on Environmental Protection, Resolutions 169 and 258B. Items are coupled. Chair Gennaro.
Aye.
Holden.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Moya.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Gutierrez.
I vote aye.
Hanks.
Aye.
Menon. Nurse.
I vote aye.
Restler.
Aye. Thank you.
Kagan.
No. No on 169.
The other one is 258, this one.
Yes. No on both.
Thank you. By a vote of 8 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and no abstentions, all items have been adopted by the committee. Mr. Chair, that is a full committee.
Thank you very much to the members and to Billy and the staff of the committee. And with that, this vote is adjourned.